the most amazing. I love that record. I love that record because songs are like your children. You're not supposed to have favorites, and in a way I don't. But some of them turn out pretty good, and some of them wind up pumping gas, for the rest of their lives. But every once in a while, you get one that goes to college and gets a job, and with any luck at all, they send checks home to dad. So
Dystopia tonight. Dystopia tonight.
Wow, John, we've been having so many incredible guests this week between Monday, Tuesday. I feel like every day we either have an incredible cartoonist, comedian, or musician, and we have our second great musician this week, huh?
Yeah, I love this dude. I'm so pumped to have him. He's like one of my favorite singer-songwriters. Does like folk blues music, and I found him in 2012. I didn't find him, but I found one of his albums the first time in 2012. And I've loved him ever since and followed his career. And I'm so pumped that he's coming on right now with us. So I'm like super excited.
Yeah, and we appreciate everybody out there that's watching and tuning in. And if you're not catching us live, make sure you go and you can watch any of the back episodes on the YouTube channel, John Poveromo at Dystopia Tonight, or find us on Apple Podcast or Spotify or anywhere where you listen to your podcast. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating. And I don't know, we had a great guest earlier this week. And
we did.
Yeah, and Peter Asher gave us some incredible clips. We're going to play a real quick clip of him, and then we're going to be right back with the amazing Chris Smither.
Dystopia tonight.
Have you ever thought about going back through something you'd produced and trying to do it in a different way? Have you ever looked back on it like, what if we did it like this? Or
yes, but usually that's a mistake because if the record was successful, people want to hear the one they heard back then.
Yeah, true.
They don't care. Artists always want to do that. They go, "Oh, we can do that one so much better than I did it back in the day." For the Greatest Hits album, let's do a new version, and everyone hears it and goes, "Ugh." I don't care. I don't care that it's nominally better in some respects.
Right.
But I want the one that I heard when I was making out the back of the car or whatever. I want the one that is that era.
Yeah.
And I know I'm like that. Sometimes you buy an album of Greatest Hits and you find out they're like remakes. So now Jeff Lynne, on the other hand, has redone all his hits. Exactly. They sound exactly like the originals.
Yeah.
Only better, cleaner, and they're great, But when people think, I can do a better arrangement or a better style of vocal or this, that, and the other, even if you think it's better, we're not going to, because we're in love with the one you did years ago.
John, I'm
good, man.
It's great to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on. How do you feel about that kind of stuff? Do you like listening to the same, like the one that you heard the first time is the one you stick with?
Yeah, in a way, but it's different when you're the musician. You have a sort of an inkling, a hankering to do it the way you would do it now. It's difficult. I understand the audience really wants to hear it the way they learned it.
Yeah.
They do. But like about 6 years ago, we went down to New Orleans, and we spent about 3 weeks there and recorded a whole retrospective album because I'd been in the business 50 years by that time, and we did all these choice little things from the whole catalog, going all the way back to the first song I ever wrote and ending up with something modern. And it was quite successful. The whole project was really successful. And yet most of the songs, I think they're totally recognizable. I don't think they're so far out in left field, but it was just really fun. We had Alan Toussaint on piano for like 2 or 3 things, and some wonderful, wonderful people. And it was the longest I'd spent in New Orleans since I left home. It was,
Wow.
so it sort of made me feel homesick, you know. I got to feeling like I was back there again, you know, for real.
Yeah. I like seeing somebody take their music that they had when they were younger and see what kind of spin or inflection they put on the lyrics, or maybe add to it when they get, older, a little bit more developed in their career and stuff like that. So I always kind of like to see what the spin is. But then there's times where like, I remember growing up, like my mom was like a huge John Denver fan. So like I would listen to that, one particular album that we had. But, he's a guy that I think that used to do like repeat songs on his albums. So
Right.
I would find a friend who liked John Denver and they'd be playing like a different album. And I'd be like, what the fuck? This isn't the song. This isn't how it goes.
Yeah, you're messing with my DNA essentially. I feel like, because I structured my whole life on this arrangement that I learned
exactly.
before.
Yeah, I'm like, I have a whole movie in my head of this and driving down the road and memories and stuff of that. But it is interesting.
We got a nice shot out of the album that I was talking about. We got, I think the Times, one of the critics from the Times put a whole list together of 100 albums to listen to during the pandemic, and I was in there.
Beautiful.
Sandwiched between Thelonious Monk and some other heavyweight. I tell you.
Oh, that is awesome.
And he did a nice job of saying, normally I don't like this kind of record, but this one does the job. So anyway,
wow. Oh, that's beautiful, man. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Justified.
Yeah, you should, dude. I love listening to your stuff. And again, when I think the album that I was talking to you about Backstage is the one that you came out with in 2012, and it was, I don't know, it was just one of those things where like it's $100 Valentine is the name of the album. Right. Love that album, and then it made me go back and like just check out your other stuff or whatever. But that's the one that I like hold on to the most. It's the one I go back to the most. I think it's because that's the first one I found.
Yeah, well, that's I go back to the first Everly Brothers record I ever heard too. I was just thinking of that because Phil just died.
Yeah.
It was, that's the way it is. It forms you. It forms you.
Mm-hmm.
It molds you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was cool too is that I didn't know this until we were kind of preparing for the interview a little bit, but you had a bunch of talented performers, Bonnie Raitt and John Ritter and a few others come together and do like a retrospect, like an album like of their favorite songs that you've done.
Oh, yeah.
What was that like, having like people like that kind of come together and do your songs? Was it cool?
That was the link. Yes, it was cool. It's one of the most amazing. I love that record. I love that record because songs are like your children, you're not supposed to have favorites, and in a way I don't, but some of them turn out pretty good, and some of them wind up pumping gas, for the rest of their lives. But every once in a while, you get one that goes to college and gets a job, and with any luck at all, they send checks home to dad.
Did you?
But those people, when they did those, I would sit there and listen to those versions of the songs, and I didn't know the record was happening, to tell you the truth. That was something my record company put together, and they told me a little bit about it. They said, "Well, we thought we'd get some people to cover your tunes and maybe do a thing," but I had no idea that there were going to be, I think there's 16 or 17 artists on there, and they're all first-rate people, and I heard these things, and it was just a marvel to me, because I would sit and listen to the arrangement, and I'd say, now how the hell did she find that in there? That is, I didn't know that was in there. I wrote it, and I didn't know it was in there. And I would, but really my overall reaction was to just listen to it, and it's like talking to my children and say, hey, I like what happened to you. I like your friends. Very cool.
I'm sure this happens to every artist at some point, but I know you've had songs that were hits. Did you ever have songs that you just you thought personally should have gone farther than they did, and kind of hold on to that this day? Or do you kind of just go
Oh
like,
yeah,
I'm just going to take whatever?
well, there's always songs that that you think, oh man, this is gonna do it. I'm getting a little old now to start believing in that, because and normally they happen through other people. It's all just, and so much of it is luck, and so much of it is. I mean, there are thousands of fabulous musicians all over the world, and how many do we actually get to interact with,
Right.
in any way? And so it's not really a surprise. But, when Bonnie first did Love Me Like a Man, when I originally wrote that, it was I Can Love You Like a Man, but she sort of changed it around. And that song, I always thought it was a good song, but I never thought it would become a blues standard. But today you can walk into any bar where there's a blues band playing, and if there's a woman singer, they're going to do that tune.
Yep.
Just sit there and wait for it.
I've heard it many a karaoke night.
Right. And so you just don't, and I never would have predicted that. I thought it was a nice tune, but I thought to myself, come on, I've done something worthwhile since I was 23, which is when I wrote that song.
Absolutely though. Yeah. I know. I was reading an interview with Bonnie Raitt. Then she was talking about you, and she had said that you were her Eric Clapton.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she said that the first time she ever said that. She said it right in front of the writer. It was backstage at some concert that we were doing, and she said it in front of the head music writer for the Boston Globe to make sure I got some press. That's the kind of friend
wow.
she is.
That's phenomenal. You can't beat that kind of friend.
No.
Oh, that's amazing. What was it like? I mean, did you hold up okay during the pandemic and stuff? Were you doing because I know we were all kind of grounded. We couldn't tour or anything like that, but did you wind up doing any online stuff? Or
I did a lot of streaming stuff, quite a bit.
How'd you like it?
I liked it well enough in the beginning, but it has a limited shelf life. It's one of those things that people get tired of it. I think the audience, they hear one or two, and then I think what's going through their mind is, I've heard this record, and because it's not like a live performance where you go hear somebody in a club and the interaction is different. The vibe is different each time, and there's that sort of ethereal thing that you build with the audience, and the audience has a part to play, and they understand that. The best audiences understand that, and it's a cooperative effort, and you create this thing that lasts for the evening, and that's missing in streaming. It's just a TV show, and there's nothing wrong with TV shows. I like them,
right?
But I like live performance.
Yeah, I know we all kind of missed out on that kind of stuff. Even doing the stand up and stuff, doing the Zoom shit was not. Sure. It lost its uniqueness after a while. We were like, oh my god, you're just staring at yourself on the screen for the most part, because people don't have their camera on, or they don't have their mic on, or they're sleeping. They forgot it's on. So
and the audience isn't feeding you either.
Right. Right. Exactly.
It's a palpable energy. Like there's it's live for the evening, where you actually have that engagement with them for the whole time. Where it leaves you feeling. So I have a question. What inspired you to get into music originally? Like, what was the initial inspiration?
There were a bunch of them. I just always sang songs. I was born in the 40s. I grew up in the 50s. My parents had these old folk music albums, Josh White and Burl Ives and the Weavers and things like that.
Nice.
And I loved to sing. I just, I would sing all these little songs, and then one day I found a guitar in the attic. I thought it was a guitar. And my uncle, who was actually my dad's brother, he was quite a good musician, and he said, "That's a uke. That's not a guitar." but I was little, so it seemed like a guitar to me.
Right.
And he says, "You want to learn how to play it?" And I said, "Sure." And so he tuned it to an open chord, and then he showed me open, 5th fret, 7th fret, and that's like a 1-4-5 progression. And he said, "Okay, now sing one of your songs." And so I started to sing one of these little folk tunes. You know, he says, "No, you got to sing it in the same key as." He goes, okay, here's your note. That's where you want to start. So I started, and I'm strumming along, and it sounded pretty good. And then it didn't sound so good. And he says, "Well, try one of the other chords there," you know. And he marched me through one whole verse, you know. I said, "Well, now what?" And he said, "Well, the next verse is just the same, you know." You just
Wow.
repeat it. And I said, "Is it that easy?" And he said, "It is that easy." he says, "Let me tell you." He says, "If you know 3 chords, you can play almost any song you know. And if you know 4 chords, you can rule the world."
That's great.
I think I was 9 or 10 years old at the time. You know?
And then your head just grew exponentially after that. You're like,
I had so much fun doing it, you know. And then I started seeing some concerts. I remember seeing, I don't know if you ever saw a classical guitarist named Julian Bream.
no,
But Julian Bream, he toured quite a bit in I guess it would have been the late 50s, early 60s. And I saw him perform at a concert. Took a girlfriend to see it. And he was so personable. And he was just one guy, one guitar, not even singing. And he was just sitting up there on stage, and he had everybody in the room wrapped around his little finger.
Wow.
And I thought, I would love to be able to do that. Oh, God. I just wanted to do it so bad. And you know, one thing led to another. My father bought me a guitar, and then I discovered that if you could actually play guitar and sing songs that you heard on the radio, that the girls would come around. They would pay attention to you. You know?
Yeah.
You didn't have to be the quarterback. You didn't have to be.
Honestly, I feel like with all the comics and musicians that we've had on, I feel like would men do anything unless women were involved? Like,
No.
like, the entire impetus to be creative or successful is just we're all that baboon with the colorful ass. You know what I mean? Just showing it off.
You want to impress the people you love.
Yeah, absolutely.
The people that mean something to you.
In the best way possible.
Yeah.
What was it? So your dad got you your first guitar. He brought it to you from Spain, right?
That's right. Yeah, he did. And he said, "You think he can handle all these strings?" I said, yeah. I've still got the guitar. You know, it's a wreck. It's a total wreck, but it's hanging up on the wall.
Wow. That's incredible. Who were the guys that did you grow up emulating anybody when you first started out?
Not really. You know, it was a whole, well, just those singers that I mentioned, you know, the Weavers and Burl Ives, things like that. And I didn't really get into sort of trying to imitate people or sound like people until I was, by that time I was probably 17 or 18 years old. I remember those my freshman year of college, and I was in Mexico City because I was going to be an anthropologist. I had no idea I was going to be a musician.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, though.
And I had a roommate, and he was from Texas, a transfer student from Texas A&M, and he loved the way I played the guitar. He loved these songs, and I had just sort of started to get into like Joan Baez and Bob Dylan, I think, and I was just sort of starting. And he said, "You should listen to this guy," and he hands me a Lightning Hopkins album.
Oh, wow!
And it was, I was listening to it, and I didn't, and I said, "What is this?" He said, "He's a blues guy from Texas." You know, well, I didn't know what actually. I knew the word blues, but I didn't know what it meant. You know, in a way.
Yeah.
Right.
But I sat there and I listened to that record, and what I heard was one man rock and roll. And I said, my prayers have been answered. You don't have to have a band. Nobody has to find out just how little you know. You know?
Right.
And so I think at one point I must have learned every song on that record. You know.
Wow.
And that led me, once I understood that, okay, this is blues, and I sort of started reading a little bit, find out what blues was all about, then I started looking for other things that would fill that bill. And one of the most significant records after that was a Vanguard album called The Blues at Newport, 1963. And it just had everybody on it. I mean, it had like 6 or 7 artists on it, but people I had never heard of. But every single one of them blew my mind. And
Wow.
principally, the one that truly blew my mind was Mississippi John Hurt. And I thought that his guitar style was just this intoxicating, rolling, sort of semi-syncopated, the kind of playing that he makes it sound so easy, and it's some of the trickiest stuff in the world, you know. But I love that. And Sonny and Terry and Brownie McGee were on that album. Dave Van Ronk was on that album. Skip James was on that album. I mean, it was just a treasure, you know. And it just sort of, I was off and running at that point. And Johnny Hammond.
Johnny
Hammond, mainly because Johnny Hammond was this young white guy who was trying to do exactly what I was wanting.
What you were,
to do.
wow, yeah.
And I thought, oh, it can be done. It can be done.
Oh man! So you were in college when you did it. Did you have your first paid gig in college, or were you just kind of touring around the campus?
No, I had a couple of little paid gigs down on Bourbon Street. There was a folk club, not a folk club, a bar with sort of a House Kingston trio, sandwiched between 2 strip clubs, and they hired me. I think I was getting $5 a night to play these little tweener sets in between, like when the House Kingston trio.
Wow.
Yeah, what plus free drinks.
Plus free drinks. Yeah, no, but that's like
But you know, we're talking 1963. You know, 64.
Right.
So you know, $5 was probably $30 today.
Yeah, that's right. That's awesome. So you got that and the free drinks, stuff like that. Did you think about at the time, like, were you straying away from anthropology, or were you still like, no, I'm going to finish and I'm going to do my stuff? And
you know, I was going to be and I'm still interested in anthropology. Interesting.
Right.
I mean, my father was an academic. Everybody in my family was even the musician, the uncle that taught me the guitar. He was an academic musician. I mean,
oh wow.
He taught musicology. He also played a mean jazz trumpet, but then I went to Paris in my junior year, and that's where the whole academic thing fell apart, because I just discovered this whole other world that I didn't know anything about, and I was playing in these little dives all over the place with people who knew so much more than I did, you know. And
did you get to hang? Is that where you like met your like friends and musical crew, kind of like over there with those guys?
Some of them have stayed friends for the rest of my life. You know, I have a couple of really good friends, but that's not really where I made all my connections. I came back to the States, and I knew that like my academic career was sort of on the skids. I sort of tried to tough out one more year in New Orleans. I was going to Tulane at the time,
nice.
and which is where my dad taught. So.
Oh wow! Yeah. you were there when your dad taught there?
Oh yeah.
Oh, what was that like?
Well, I never saw him. You know.
Oh, you never did? Okay.
He was in the language department, but I saw him. But
yeah. But it wasn't like you guys.
You know, I didn't have to deal with him.
Got it.
So, and then I got, you know, by the time I got to the end of that 4th year, I knew that the degree was certainly not going to happen. And but a friend of mine who also played guitar had said, "Come on over. Let's go to." He lived in Florida. Okay. He said, you know, he says Eric von Schmidt lives in Sarasota in the wintertime.
Oh, nice.
And Eric von Schmidt, if you don't know him, is famously mentioned on Bob Dylan's first record.
Yep.
And he was sort of a leading light in the whole Cambridge songwriter folk scene, and Club 47 and that whole shooting match. And so I said, well, that would be amazing, you know. So we drove over to Florida. I think we had 3 or 4 days off, and we took a week, and went to Florida and just looked him up in the phone book.
And you met him?
Yeah, I called him up. I said, man, my name's Chris. I'm a big fan of yours. I'm from New Orleans visiting here, and I found out that you lived here. And he said, well, come on over.
Wow.
And I you know, I know this sounds like totally improbable. I mean, but and so we went over to his house. He had this little beach house on Siesta Key, and which you cannot afford to live on. I don't care how much money you got nowadays. but it's all high rises and huge mansions and stuff now. But we went over to his house, and it was full of people that I had seen on records. Jim Queskin's Jug Band, half of them were there.
Wow, that's incredible.
So I went in, and he met me at the door and handed me a beer and said, "Hey, Chris, come on in." You know, and I went in, and you know, at some point during the evening, he says, "Well, play us something." You know, so I played. Everybody was playing. You know, everybody was sort of song swapping. So I played something the best I knew how. You know, and everybody went, "Wow, that's all right. Play us another."
Nice.
and I did. So anyway, you know,
how old
gradually,
were you?
I would have been 20 at the time.
Jesus, and you got to, wow, that's incredible.
19, 20.
Called him up on the phone book, out of the phone book, and he just invites you over, and all these guys are there.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
So, and then he says, "Well, where are you living now?" And I said, "New Orleans." And he said, "Well, oh man," he says, "you got to come up to, you know, New York and Cambridge at Club 47. People are never going to hear you in New Orleans." And he was right, you know. But
yeah, did you make the move?
Oh, you kidding me? That was the word of God. that was the Lord Himself saying,
"Yeah,
get thee gone."
Wow.
And I got up there as fast as I could. You know, I never did finish that year of school, and I went up.
Okay.
And I met a girl, another guitar player, singer, who had aspirations, and she had a nice little Mustang, you know, and we drove all we hit Washington, and we had, you know, all the cities on the way up the East Coast, you know, and finally got to Cambridge. Got to this is gonna I know this all sounds so improbable, but we get to Cambridge. The night that we got to Cambridge, we find Harvard Square, we find the Club 47, and I go and I look at the door, and who should be playing that night? Eric
No way.
Smith.
Oh my God. That's nuts.
And so there was this guy at the door, and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I said, I found out later his name was Jim Rooney. Now, Jim Rooney is a very famous figure. And I mean, he's produced a lot of country people. He produced Nancy Griffith, you know. Who
I know. Who just I'm crushed by that. That was terrible.
I know. She was a wonderful woman.
Yeah.
But and I said, "I'm a friend of Eric's, you know." And he said, "Well, he's just right back there. You can go say hi if you want." He didn't even charge me any money, you know.
Oh,
and I went in. And Eric says, he said, "Hey, man." And I think he was a little bit afraid because I'd taken him at his word. I just sort of said, "Yeah, I'm going, you know." And he says, "Hey, you want to play some songs? Go up and play 3 songs before I start my second set."
Wow.
I thought my fortune is made.
Yeah.
My first night in Cambridge, and I'm playing on the stage of the Club 47. Well, I didn't get back into the Club 47 for another 30 years, but that was the beginning. And
wow.
It was I don't know. I thought I was going to spend a summer doing that.
Yeah.
You know.
What a beautiful start, though. I mean, you can't. That's incredible.
No, it's like you can't make these things up. You know.
Yeah. I mean, were you at the time aware of how random that was, or were you just like, no, this is?
I was scared to death. You know.
That's what I like to hear. That makes it make more sense to me.
I couldn't believe it. You know, but.
What did your parents think when you left and went out there? Were they like cool with you dropping out of college at the time, or? No,
they weren't cool with it, but you know. They had the grace and the intelligence not to make a fuss about it, you know.
Nice.
It was, and it took, you know, after about 3 years, I think my father realized that I hadn't asked him for any money. So. Okay. That's it. But you know what really happened? Now this is another story. That same uncle, that taught me the ukulele, his name was Howard Smith.
Okay.
And my dad's younger brother.
Mhm.
And I went back home to visit at some point, and I was down in New Orleans. Now, my Uncle Howard was also at Tulane. He later went to the University of North Carolina, but he was at
Okay.
Tulane at the time. And he was over at the house, and we were sitting around in the dining room, just, drinking coffee and talking and this, that, and the other. And my dad says, "Hey, Chris, go get your guitar, play something for Howard." And I didn't want to do it. Because Howard like a real musician, and it was also like this pressure situation. But my father could be insistent when he wanted to, so I got the guitar and I came in and I played something I was working on. I played it, man, as well as I could play it, and it was fast and it was loud and it was syncopated, and I finished it. And Howard leans back in his chair and he goes, "Man, that's great." And my father looks at him and goes, "Really?" But from that moment on, I never got a word of grief about what I
Wow.
was doing from my father, because the family expert had pronounced judgment and said,
Oh, that's
Wow.
beautiful.
So
Did they come out to see you play, like perform in clubs and
many
stuff eventually?
many times.
That's
Times.
great.
Yeah. And they
What was-
assiduously saved articles, that would appear.
Yeah.
Man.
So it's incredible, because I feel like, meeting one of your heroes, is calling him up on the phone book and then getting to go over to his house and then having him tell you to come out and move a certain place and then seeing him again. Like, what do you consider that like the moment where you kind of broke in the music business, where you were like, this is my trajectory? Or is there another moment where you were like, I'm solidified now, I'm in?
I never felt like I was solidified or in until I had been in for a good long time.
Good long time.
I mean, it was. It's an interesting kind of thing. I had moments when I thought I was going to be a big star.
Really?
I mean, that first summer, I didn't know what I was going to do at the end of the summer, because the Vietnam War was raging, and I no longer had a student deferment, and there was no lottery in those days. If you didn't have some kind of deferment,
You had to go.
you go get shot at, and
Right.
Then so everything was kind of up in the air, and I was having the time of my life. I mean, I was so happy. I was doing something that I wanted to do, and I was doing it well, and I was getting somewhere. That's how I felt, But it was when that problem got solved about the draft that I started to feel like, okay, I'm in this for the long run as far as I can see.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of road work right away? Like, were you out touring and stuff like that when you were younger too?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I was. I mean, it took me 5 years to get a record deal.
Wow. Okay.
And I finally did get a record deal. I'm with Poppy Records. I was listening to Townes Van Zandt, and he was on Poppy Records, and I said, well, maybe they would like me if they like this guy. So
you just submitted an album?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
And they sent some guys up to a club to hear me, and they said, yeah, we want to do this. And I had a manager at the time. He was kind of a high-powered manager in terms of name recognition, because he managed all the top acts. He managed Joan Baez, he managed Doc Watson, and
wow,
all these folk acts. And I never felt like he did much for me, but that was at the time. But I didn't realize, like what kind of exposure just being on his roster gave me, And so pretty soon I was playing clubs in New York and Philadelphia, and then I got to do on my second album. I got to go out and do West Coast and then Chicago.
Did you I was going to ask, when you were out on the West Coast and you were doing that album and stuff, did you ever feel like part of that crew that was up in Laurel Canyon and like those guys? Like, did you ever what was your yeah? Sorry,
that was sort of out of my those guys were. I mean, I've subsequently met many of them.
Yes,
some of them have become friends. But at the time, at the time, that was a whole other world, you know, and people were leaving the East Coast to go out and participate in that.
Right.
But I was comfortable in the East Coast. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd been to California and I enjoyed it enormously, but I felt like I was really far away from everything, you know, even though there was all this action going on, you know.
Yeah.
I felt like almost like the East Coast was my spiritual home.
Mm-hmm.
In terms, because it was old, you know.
Yeah.
there was this patina of antiquity about it, you know, and sort of dyed in the wool, a lot of compost that you were sitting on top of, and plus it was halfway between Paris and San Francisco, so that's a nice place.
Right. I was gonna say that, but I think you can actually tell the difference between the album made on the West Coast and then from the other albums on the East Coast. You know what I mean? There is a sense of like when you made those other albums, when you were comfortable where you were, there's a different tone to those.
It's a different
albums.
vibe to it.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time to figure out, you know, how to enjoy myself in the studio. I always, you know, making the records was torture for me in the beginning because
what's that process like?
Well, for me, it was like I always had this sense that it was final exam time, you know, and I hadn't studied enough, and now people were going to find out just how bad I really was because I didn't get to make the records by myself. It's like I was a solo artist, and suddenly I was playing with these other people, you know.
Yeah.
And the thing that I did find out in the beginning was that those people were some of the kindest, some of the sweetest people in the world. These people that I were working with, and they would encourage me, and, you know, and come and I'll tell you. You want to hear a story?
Yes, please.
The bass player, Richard Davis, fabulous jazz bassist. He was on my first record, and I was scared to death. You know, we had a drummer. I'd hardly ever worked with a drummer before. I had one friend in the studio. In fact, a guy that I had met in Paris way back in '64. You know.
Oh, nice.
And he was playing second guitar and some of the lead stuff. And so, you know, here I was recording my first recording, and I was in RCA Studio A. I mean, this is legendary studio.
Right.
So we've been working on this one tune, and Richard comes over to me and he says, you know, can you explain something to me? There's this little coda in this song, and I can't quite seem to get it. And your buddy over here plays it like he's falling off a log, and I can't quite catch it. So if you could explain it to me, I think I'd do a better job for you. Well, I didn't even know what a coda was. You know? So I said to him, you know, I said, well, I can try. I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about when you say coda. I said, I don't know very much about music, really. And he looked at me and he touched me on the knee and he said, oh, don't say that. He says, you know a great deal about music. He says, you just don't know how to talk about it. and it was the kindest, most comforting thing that I don't think he'll ever have any idea of what it meant to me to have him say that to me at the time. But, you know, that's the kind of people that you run into.
That's really nice too. It's funny that you say that because we had Peter Asher on the other day, and I was kind of just talking about how, like, you know, all the great musicians, all my heroes and everything, didn't really know how to read or write music or anything like that. They taught themselves how to play. They knew it in their head organically.
Right.
But to do that kind of stuff. So that's interesting that they said that to you, because it seems like those are all the best musicians are the ones that don't, you know, they're just like, it's already in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the best musicians are the ones that actually do learn something about music, but they don't let it hurt their playing.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So you were in California, you went and did those albums. What was your writing process like, and did it evolve like over time from when you were, I mean, obviously it evolved in some sense, but were you a type of guy that wrote the music first, a song came in your head and then you did the lyrics, or was it lyrics?
No, it's always music first with me. You know, it starts with a guitar lick, and then I sort of work my way through, you know, the harmonic rhythm, get the changes down, and usually, often as not, it starts with a lick that I think, oh, that's cool, and I
nice.
just build on the lick, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that becomes like a little signature motif within the song.
Right.
Then I got to come up with, the next step is a melody against the guitar part. I mean, as a guitar player, I'm really an accompanist, more than anything, and I'm better at it, way better than I used to be, but still, then I start singing against it, just to, trying to find a tune within those changes, and I start scat singing, it's just nonsense syllables, and eventually something pops out, and then you look at it and go like, what the hell is that about? I've often said, it's like trying to have a conversation with a part of your brain that you're not really on speaking terms with, and you have to sort of, Cliff Eberhardt once said, when he writes, he sits there and he's writing it, and he turns his head away from the pencil and he says, I'm not looking at you. Because he doesn't want to scare it off,
Right.
I understand exactly what he means. You have to let it, people who don't write songs often will have a notion that the song, you have the idea for the song and then you just sort of write it down. And in fact, what happens is you start writing and then the idea for the song happens. It's a very organic process. And now I know a lot of people who write the lyrics first, haven't done that. But to me, that's a very difficult proposition, because then you have to start forcing the scansion and the rhythm. If I can get the guitar rhythm down, then the lyrics automatically fit the beat.
Wow.
I don't have to force them.
Where do you draw any inspiration from, like personal experiences or books you've read or people that inspire you over for the lyrics?
All kinds of things. Yeah, all those things. Just lines. I wrote one song called "Up on the Lowdown," and it was that came out of a conversation I was having with my mechanic, who was trying to put this old jalopy that I
that's great
at the time. And he calls me up. He says, Chris, it's got this wrong with it. It's got that wrong with it. And I said, okay, how much money are we up to? And he said, oh, we're up to about $600-700. And I said, okay, keep going. Just keep fixing things, but keep me up on the lowdown. And about what's really going on.
Yeah.
And he said, right, I'll check in with you. And then I was working on tunes at the time. I sat back down, I go, up on the lowdown. God,
right.
And,
one of my favorite songs of yours is off of the first album that I heard of yours, in the 2012 album that you came out with, and it's What They Say.
Oh,
where did that song come from? Because I love the lyrics in that song are beautiful.
That came from that, it's just that whole notion of people talking about things that they have no idea.
Yes, and it was
trying to be authoritative. I'm embarrassed to say that song it's been out of the rotation so long that I wouldn't even know how to start to play it for you at the moment.
Oh, wow.
It's a catchy little number, and actually Loudon Wainwright did that tune.
Yes, he played it on the
on the
great
that album, and did a great job. And one of the things that I've been doing during the pandemic is going back over old material that I haven't played in a long time, and I look at it and I go, shit, that's a good song.
Yeah, it is. It's so funny because it's one of those songs that the minute it starts with that, the first line is, they say the good die young, but it ain't for certain I've been good all day. I was like, oh my, like it just hit me immediately where I was like, that's a great line. Like, that's so
thank you.
Yeah, that's great. And then towards the end, when you said, if words were wisdom, we'd all speak and smarten up from week to week. I was like, oh my God, that's so great. Because everybody is just like, blah, 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 blah. And you're not even getting it. Yeah. You're like, oh, everybody's so full of shit. Yeah,
But
that was always.
thanks for reminding me of that, because I'll sit down and woodshed that song tomorrow.
Oh, great! Oh my God, I'd be so glad. I'll come to see you, man. If I hope I hope
Okay.
it makes it back in the roster when I come.
Right.
That's like one of the best. So that's cool. So you start out with the music and stuff first, and whatever. When you like, do you ever collaborate with other artists or anything like that? Do you ever kind of like feel like, sitting down and jamming, and then something comes from that?
A few times I have, there's one song that I co-wrote. I'm not a co-writer. I mean, to me, there's something intensely private about writing songs, and it's all I can do to find somebody that I will even show unfinished work to.
Right.
But I've done a couple, and they've been very successful. Actually, I mean, from a personal standpoint, I really like them, But recently, the last couple of records, especially my producer, David Goody, is a marvelous musician. I mean, he's one of the people that I was talking about who knows everything there is to know about music, but he doesn't let it hurt his playing,
Right.
He's a fabulous player, and he can get me going, and he's one of those people that everybody needs, that you trust, to and he'll come up, and if I'm truly buckling down to produce enough tunes for a new record, I will get together with him for like 2 and 3 day sessions. He lives down in Austin, Texas, but he'll come up, or I'll go down, and we'll kick stuff around, and and he'll say, "Play me something," So I start playing him something I'm working on, and if he feels like it, he'll grab a guitar and start filling in some other parts and listening to it, and then and then he says, we stop, we get to the end, and he'll look at me and say, "That's good. Keep it up." And that's all I need. That's what I need,
I hear you.
But it gets me going, and if you told me that I would spend 18 months, during this pandemic, not doing anything, I would have said, "Hey man, I'll have 3 albums written," but I don't, I got about a half a record in the infancy stages, and I realize now that I've got to be out there playing. I got to be out there doing it, and sort of then I have to get disciplined. And to me, it's very hard for me to get disciplined when it's so easy to lay around the house.
Yeah. It's weird. Is it more like, because I mean, the pandemic kind of affected us all, and it shifted the, our mindset, our business sense, or whatever. But I feel the same way you kind of did. Without that feedback and without kind of meeting people and being out in the world, it does kind of diminish, the creativity and stuff like that.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it takes people. It's not. I don't know. There's some people I know that that's not true of everybody.
Right.
There are people that can work alone and do.
Right.
But, I don't think.
Because it is funny, because you just from what we've been talking about, you describe yourself as a very singular act. You're somewhat uncomfortable being around other people, but you do rely on them in a certain sense to get the creative juices flowing. So it's a delicate balance.
Right. Well, I've gotten better about that, and the first producer that I had that really taught me how to enjoy myself in the studio was Stephen Bruton, and Bruton knew how to have fun in the studio, and he showed me how. And he said, one of the things he told me was, Chris, we're not carving a granite statue. This is a snapshot.
That's fantastic. Well, a lot of people seem to ask you to play stuff. Would you be able to play us something on the show?
Sure.
Now, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
That would be great.
Love to hear something, man. Thank you.
Here's one. One of the things that people ask me all the time, and I think Tom was getting ready to ask me this, was how growing up in New Orleans influenced my music or the way I think about it. And it's a question that I never know how to answer, because it's like, and this line appears in the song, it's like asking a fish what he thinks about water. He doesn't think about it. So when we were down in New Orleans doing this, that's a funny little echo song. You were talking about that before. I heard it. Anyway, so Goody says to me, He says, "Man, you should write a new song for this album. At least one new one. For this."
Mhm.
And I didn't want to do it because that was going to be a lot of work. And he said, "No, come on, do it." So I wrote this song, and it's called "What I Do," and it's sort of an attempt to answer that question about New Orleans.
Nice.
Can you hear this? Okay.
Beautiful.
Well, down in Nola where we listen, some of that, some of this, the keys beyond the normal range. Everything's a little strange, but mostly it's just a place to be. You got to leave it before you see it sticks to you. I left before you did me in, down and dirty. Don't begin to talk about my state of mind. All I wanted was to find a way to get between that funky and that played clean too. Hey, forget about my feelings, I don't mind. But don't forget that second line. Well, can't you just come out and play? Let's see what you got today. How you make it sound that way, I never know just what to say. It's beans and rice and sticky nights, and they too fade to keep it in the groove. It just comes out that way, won't go back in like gumbo running down your chin. The feeling's just a little thin, but it's slick as glass and dark as sin, with dime beats on the upside to take you for a ride and make it move. Oh, I see they say, hey, no wonder, it's a miracle. You ain't 6 feet under. Fish don't understand the water, they just do the things they own. Birds don't understand the air, they don't even know it's there. They don't have a clue, but just like me, they do the things they do. It's what I do, it's what I do, it's what I do.
That was
Thank
amazing.
you. That was so great, dude. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That song felt like New Orleans. I love New Orleans. I feel like
Yeah.
the culture, the food, everything about it
Yeah.
is so amazing.
It's a great place. I'll tell you something though, it's a great place to be from. It gives you instant cred, whether you deserve it or not.
Yeah. Oh, that's so. You said you missed it when you went back there. Did you ever plan on going back again?
I like visiting now.
Yeah.
It's a strange place, and it's very attractive, but it's very seductive. It's
Yeah.
very inward looking, and you can get lost there.
Right.
Most of the musicians I know that got anywhere had to leave.
Right.
And that includes Louis Armstrong.
Is there just a lot of vices there that kind of prey on people, creative people?
Well, no, it's not that. Well, there are those, but those you can find those anywhere. They exist there.
Yeah, that's true.
In their own sort of unique way. But mainly, it's because there's so many places to play. There's so many things for musicians to do that they can kind of make a living without leaving town.
Wow.
So nobody
That's a good
hears
point.
about them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
kind
there's
of
a lot of
amazing.
places like that too for like I feel like, even New York to a certain extent, like if you're a stand-up and you're in New York, you can get a very bad habit of playing the same like
circuit,
circuit, same clubs, and never leaving and stuff. And then you kind of miss out on like a richer experience of, touring the country and stuff.
Yeah.
Because travel was the thing I always loved about performing anywhere. I just like going places and meeting new people and, trying to get lost outside of the hotel room.
Yeah, the charm of that fades a little bit the older you get. But
you're not the first person to tell me that, and I'm always like, "Wow, is it happening?" Because I feel it every now and again. I think even. Sorry, I was thinking even after the pandemic too. Like I've gotten offers to go. We're hitting it again apparently, and we don't know what's going to happen. But offers to go like a certain distance sometimes, and I'm like, I don't think I want to.
People ask me, do you still enjoy the touring? And I say, I love the playing, I love the performance, but the getting there is not as much fun as it used to be. But it's on the other hand, it's easier than it used to be because the accommodations are nicer than not living on people's couches anymore.
Yeah, that's. I don't know what that's like. I don't. No, I know what you mean. It's that's always a benefit to that kind of stuff too. And I don't know. Like, there's times I'm fool myself into thinking I've missed it, and then you go do a gig that's like 10 hours away, and I'm like, I want to get out of this fucking car. I don't want to see street signs or trees. It's just brutal.
I can't do that. I mean, I'm down to the point now where I'll drive for 4 hours, and if I have to drive further than that, I better be going the day before the gig, not the same day.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. I remember one time, I never did it again, but I remember doing a college gig, and I made the mistake of I live in New Jersey. It was in Maine. I was like, I was just leave early that day and get there. Right. I was so shot by the time I got, it was like a 11, 12 hour. There was like a blizzard also. All I got to do was pop into my hotel room and then leave immediately and then go to the gig and then did an hour and then go back to the hotel room. And I was wrecked.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm never fucking doing that again. That was brutal.
It is.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an hour. I don't want to keep you any longer than that. If you want to stay, we can still talk. But I ask everybody that's on the show this, and I'd love to get your take on it. If you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice that would kind of help you out today, something that you didn't know then that you know now, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. I think, if I had learned earlier that the important thing is the music and not me, I would have been better off. When I realized that it came a point probably in the middle of my career, and it happened on stage, and I was facing a situation that I didn't like, and I thought was unfair, and I thought it wasn't showing me to my best advantage. And suddenly this little light came on, and I said, all you got to do is play the best you know how and lay it out there. That's the only thing that's in your power at all. Right. And and since then I've learned that is really all I have to do. You just take the me out of it and make it the music. And believe me, if you do that, the me will get all the attention it can handle.
Right.
Yeah. It's not about me. It's about can I lay something out there that moves people.
That's great. That's really good advice. I feel like that spans all kind of artistry and any kind of performing. And do you have any advice for anybody coming up in the music business now?
Don't learn how to do anything else. You'll go do it for sure.
Yeah. I had a theater arts teacher I remember who was like, if you have a fallback plan, you're going to fall back on it.
That's it.
Yeah. And I used to think about that. I'd be like, fuck. So I shouldn't get a job.
Don't get something you can't walk out on immediately, at a moment's notice.
Yes, absolutely.
And are you listed in the phone book? Is the other question.
Yeah,
artist is traveling.
Yeah, I love coming to Boston. So
If you want to find me, you can find me. Yeah, I'm not that hard to find.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, dude. I really appreciate it, and I love all your music and stuff. And I hope I get to see you live one day as this all clears up and stuff.
It's a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you live myself.
Thanks so much, man.
Absolutely, us too. I'm definitely coming with John. I can't wait to see.
Yeah,
it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Right. You're very welcome. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Take care, man. Peace.
Dystopia tonight.